Hey there. Thanks for tuning in. You ready for another episode of My Bigfoot Sighting? Alright then, let's do this.
Seen a bunch of run-down no-horse towns where the church is the backbone, loves and the plow, and the five-string melodies grooving, with the farmland rows where the roots run deep, beyond the noise of the busy streets, where the songs of the South are soothing. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah.
If you've had a Bigfoot sighting and would like to be a guest, please go to mybigfootsighting.com and let me know.
My Bigfoot sightings began in the early part of 2016. I was definitely not a believer. I did not believe these creatures were real. I was raised to believe that monsters and these beings don't exist. I believe in the Lord, so I believe that only heaven and hell and angels and demons were real and nothing else. So I 100% did not believe in this. And January of 2016 has changed our lives forever. They're completely different than they used to be. It was about 3:30 in the morning, and I woke up from a very deep sleep with the overwhelming feeling of dread, like if your house is on fire, like it was just urgency. Get up, get up. I jumped up. My husband was there. He was sleeping. I didn't even wake him up. I don't know why. I should have. Normally I would have. I grabbed a spotlight and we go in and out of our front door. Well, I go to the back door, and I don't know why I went to the back door, but I knew where to go. And I started shining this spotlight across, we had about 5 acres, across the back field. Well, it was all open, 3 acres of it, and then the last 2 acres starts at the wood line and starts gradually going up into the Smoky Mountains. This happened in Tennessee, the first experience in the foothills of the Smokies, about an hour from Gatlinburg. Well, there's a little creek that runs right through the middle of the field, and it's about 4 feet wide, maybe 2 feet deep. And when it rains, the mountain water will just rush through that creek, and it won't flood the field. Well, I pan the light across the field, and I'm expecting to see deer because there was always deer out there. I mean, that was a daily thing, and I don't see anything. And I thought that's unusual. Well, maybe they're just not out there right now. And I get over to where the creek is with the spotlight, and then all of a sudden I see this bear bent over, like standing in the creek, and it's bent over and it's drinking water. And I'm like, oh, wow, there's a bear. Well, the first problem with that is the neighbors that had all been there 15 plus years. They lived in farmhouses or older homes. They were spread out, about a half a football field length, each, and some farther. So, and the road was one way in and one way out. Well, they had said before, and I asked them, do bears come down out of the mountains this far? And they said, no, they don't need to. There's enough food from the visitors up in the park, up in the Smoky Mountains National Park. And they've all said, we've been here 15, 20 years, never seen one. So I'm like, wow, there's a bear. Well, before I had a chance to even process anything else, it seemed like that it was going in slow motion, but really, I mean, it just happened so quick. It stands up, it leans its head back, and lets out the scream. So long and so loud. Well, when you shine this light, you have to put your finger on the trigger for the light to keep going. I did not realize at the time the reason it was screaming is because I was hitting it with this bright light. This light would light up. It would light up a whole acre easily, like daylight. It was really, really bright. And so when it started screaming, I was standing in an upright position We measured it after the fact. It was somewhere between, I don't know, 70 to 90 feet. I say more like 90 feet. And it was in the clear. The woods were in the background. So there was about 20 feet in the back, farther back from where it was standing, where the creek was, and then 20 feet back is where the wood line started. So where it was standing, there was dead grass. It was wintertime. There was nothing. I had an absolutely clear view of it. And when it stood up and started screaming, immediately I saw hands, and the hands were black. It was too far to tell what the fingernails looked like, anything like that. I saw hair. First, I might have wanted to call it fur, but when I thought about it, it's hair. It looked kind of like orangutan hair, shiny, silky. So it wasn't completely covered in hair or fur like a dog would be, but it did have hair all over its body. And I could see a little bit of a belly where it looked like it may have been, 4 or 5 months pregnant. I'm not sure if it was male or female. I could see breast. It was standing sideways, so I only had a side view of it. I could not see its face. I'm actually kind of thankful for that, because I'm already having enough issues with this situation as it is. And I saw hands, and the only thing I could compare it to at the time is I had a box of tissues, an average size box of Kleenex tissues. They you blow your nose with, sitting there on the dryer by the back door, and its hands were as big as those tissue boxes. I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. It had very muscular legs. I couldn't see the feet because it was standing in a creek. The hair was like a mahogany-ish, very like a chestnut, woody colored, dark, blackish brown. It was shiny. The light just, I don't know. I was expecting some gleam to kind of bounce off the hair because it was shiny, but it didn't. I could see shiny hair, and the light just sucked into its body, its body absorbed all the light. I couldn't understand how the light was not reflecting off of this being like it should have been. Well, when it started to scream, I'm in a standing up position by the back door. I got so scared that I just crumpled over in a ball in a standing up position. I couldn't even believe it. And it hurt. It hurt my ears. And then all of a sudden I got hit with this wave. The best way to describe it, it's like an ocean wave. It started from my head, and it just whoosh, 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 rippled through my body all the way down to my feet. And when it did that, I felt my organs vibrating. It's exactly like if you pull up next to somebody and they have a bass of a stereo too loud, and your insides kind of thump a little bit. That's what happened. And I got really scared, but I couldn't move was the scariest part. And during that time, I couldn't really think either. It's like my brain and my body froze. It's just my brain went blank, and I couldn't move. I literally just crumpled over standing up, and my finger was still on the trigger of the light. Well, when it was screaming, it sounded like a woman being murdered, and her guts coming out at the same time. It was loud. The loudest thing was like an air horn, louder than an air horn. The loudest thing I've ever heard, screechy. And it also sounded as I really thought about the sound, almost sounded like it'd be screaming through an aluminum or metal tube, like it had a ring to it, kind of an echo. If you yell through a tube, it has that ting kind of sound to it. And that's what it was doing. I don't know if it was because it was just bouncing off the trees. At nighttime, sound is different, or it was just so loud that's how it did. But I'm standing in this position, crumpled over, and I can't move. And I don't think it was because I was afraid, because fight or flight, I usually stand my ground. I hunted, 20 years. I grew up playing in the woods, hiking all over. I've been chased by a bear in West Virginia, and I kind of stood my ground, and the bear backed off. So I know not to run. And I usually, I don't, the fight or flight thing, I didn't even get a chance for it to happen. I just was frozen for about, I'd say, good 20 seconds. And this thing was still screaming. It did not take a breath, and it did not pause. I couldn't understand it either. A human cannot scream that long without taking a breath. And after about 20, between 20 to 30 seconds, it's very hard to say, but it's definitely 20-second scream. I realized I kind of like shook it off like a dog when they get hurt or they can't, I don't know, they shake their head like they're shaking it off. That's kind of what I did. I had to like shake off this, I don't know, frozenness that was over me. And I shook it off and I let my finger off the trigger and it stopped screaming. And I knew exactly what it was. The only thing I knew about Bigfoots is I saw the Patterson Gimlin film like everybody's seen, and that was it. I never listened to a podcast. I never watched any shows. I didn't believe anytime my husband would ever mention it. I would be like, "You're nuts. That stuff is so crazy. Get this. Give me a break. You know that's not real. The only thing that's real is, God and the devil, and that's it. There is nothing else." Oh my gosh, I was so wrong. I thought that I was an open-minded person, and I was not. I was so closed-minded. I wanted to live in a safe little bubble, like everything has its place and in order, and I know what's what. Well, when there's things that there's not a box to put them in, it makes you feel scared and uncomfortable, and I didn't want to believe that. I didn't want that to be real, but it was real. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I just saw Bigfoot. Before I go and tell everybody, because I'm going to tell everybody that I've seen a Bigfoot, I got to be 100% sure. And I'm like, Carey, you don't want to do this. You got to do it. I had to shine the light on it again, and I did not want to do it because I didn't know what was going to happen. So I hit it with the light again, and this time I was kind of anticipating the scream. Hit it with the light again, same thing happened again, except this time I was anticipating the scream, and I was more inside the door, behind the door, the back door, from our house, and it had moved into the beginning of the wood line. I could still see it, the side view of it, and it stopped when I hit it with the light, and it screamed exactly the same way again, except it was weird. It's like it started to try to freeze me, but I was expecting it, and I kind of braced for it, so it didn't really all the way happen. And maybe because it was too far, I don't know. But as soon as I hit it with the light again, and I could see, yep, that's what it is. That's a Bigfoot. I let my hand off the trigger of the light, and it moved on, and I just stood there checking the lock like 100 times to make sure the door was locked. It wouldn't have done any good. This thing, I would say afterwards, we kind of measured where its head was to one of the trees. Like when I looked out there and I saw the top of its head, and I could see one of the trees in the background. That's how we measured it, and it was about almost 8 feet tall, a little over 7.5 feet tall. And I would say 400 to 600 pounds. It was very solid. It wasn't skinny. It wasn't like hulked out like I've heard. It was just solid in every way. And it was so big. We had a modular home. If it wanted to literally just punch its hand right through the wall and grab me right out of the house, it could have. The door was a joke. I could have left the door wide open. If it wanted to come in, it's coming in. And I laid there all night until my husband woke up. And then I was like, oh my gosh, you're not going to, and he's like, what? And I told him everything that I saw, and he believed me. We went out there to the creek and looked, and there was a footprint, and they were all up and down the creek, but we didn't know anything about how to cast or even casting. I hadn't even heard anything. I hadn't even heard that word before. I mean, I'm sure I did, but you know what I mean? Like, I didn't know you cast a print. I didn't know anything about that. Because like I said, as soon as I ever heard anything about Bigfoot, I shut it down immediately because I didn't want to hear it. It's too scary. It wasn't supposed to be real. There's nowhere to put that in my head. I didn't want to hear it. And it's true. And I still to this day, when I say it out loud, it's different than saying it in your head. And some of my family members have laughed right in my face when I told them. And my mother, she just looks at me like, I want to believe you, but I don't know if you're really okay or you're not okay, or I'm not sure. And then some of my family members just literally laughed right in my face. And I'm like, I don't care. Laugh all you want. I saw it and it's real. And ever since then, it's continued. That was my first encounter. After that happened, let me back up. a little bit before that first encounter, there was some signs that something was there. We were moving boxes in about the week before from our car. Now, the side of the house where you park, the woods are about 30 feet away. It's a long gravel driveway, and the woods are behind the house. There's a couple acres in the front, a couple acres of cleared in the back, or it's cleared in the front. And then there's a little road in the front. On the other side of the road, it's a one lane. It's almost like a 1-lane road, little country road. There's a railroad tracks, and on the other side of the railroad tracks is a river, and you can walk the railroad tracks to a wildlife management refuge. My dealings with these and experiences with these things, 4 different wildlife management refuges in 3 different states. These things seem to be like that is where they're at. I almost feel like, and it's like nobody goes there, and there's nothing built there. It's like just water and plenty of food. It's almost like these wildlife management refuge are set up for these cryptids to live, and the government owns it, and that's just their safe spot. We lived at the end of our road was a wildlife management refuge. It was a lot of water. It was a lot of food. Nobody ever went there. Very remote. It was very beautiful. We would walk the railroad tracks sometimes and go to this wildlife refuge. I would call it the bone pile. As we were walking the railroad tracks, in the beginning when we moved in, we're walking and it was windy, but not that windy. As we're walking, we have 2 dogs. I have a service dog, a Rottweiler. My husband, has a pit bull, and he's walking one dog, I'm walking the other. And all of a sudden my Rottweiler starts growling, and it's almost like a tunnel. Both sides you're surrounded by thick woods, and there's no houses around. And we're on our way to the wildlife management refuge at the end of our street, which is a dead end. And it's about a mile walk. It's a nice walk, a good way to get exercise. We get about, 10 minutes into the walk, and my dog starts growling. And then all of a sudden it sounds like something is driving a bulldozer through the trees. You hear like, gap, snap, pow, bang, bang, all this commotion. And it literally sounds like the freaking forest is coming down. And I swear I could almost, gosh, I wish there's not even words to describe it. It felt like a dinosaur was, as crazy as that sounds, it felt like a dinosaur was running on the ground. Like I could hear and feel the footsteps of this thing. And it would hit one of the trees, like a big tree, and you could look over to the right, and you could see this whole tree, and it was like a live big tree. It wasn't a pine tree that was bending in the wind. This whole tree would snap and just pow, come down, and all the trees around it would come down. And I was like, I froze. I was like, oh my gosh, like I froze in a little ball standing up. And I told my husband, and my dog was growling. I'm like, did you hear that? And he's like, yeah, let's just keep going. I'm like, what is wrong with you? Like right now, like something is literally chasing us alongside of us in the woods, running on the ground, hitting a tree, taking down the whole tree. And then it keeps going. And that happened another time. And he's like, let's just keep walking, ignore it. And I'm like, I don't know who's crazier right now, me or him. So we keep walking. We get near the end. There's a section where it's a hill goes really high on each side. And I look over and I call it the boneyard because there's a whole pile of animal bones. There's cats, there's dogs, there's raccoons, looks like pelicans. I've never even seen a pelican. It looks like a pelican. All these skeletons. Oh my gosh, there must have been hundreds of turtle shells everywhere. Just so many bones, deer galore, just scattered in this one little section, about a 10-foot section where it's completely blindsided on nobody. If you drove down the road, which is about half an acre through thick woods to get to the wildlife refuge, this is a blind spot. Nobody would be able to see anything. And we went down to the wildlife refuge. We get down there, we get ready to put our kayaks in, which we had left down there the day before, and we hear this loud roar. It sounds like a lion at the zoo. And it's daytime. It's like 11:30 in the morning, weekday, and we both look at each other, and when that roar hit, that same thing, it vibrated, like my insides vibrated. And my husband said the same thing. And I just said, I don't want to, I'm scared. I don't want to be here. I just want to go home. I just want to go home. So instead of going back the tracks, we walked the road. Well, on the way out of the wildlife refuge, I find a couple structures. I find this one structure, which was really strange, and I had pictures of it. It's about 11 feet long by about 6 feet wide. It is I don't even understand what they'd make, who would make it. It's in a spot where, I don't know, you'd have to be lucky to hike, if you were hiking through the woods, to come along it. It's not near the road. It's not near a house. It's not near where anybody would ever even find it. It's like it'd be like finding a needle in a haystack. And all of a sudden I said, hold on. He's like, where are you going? And I'm like, I don't know. I walk over to this spot and I feel like the energy is wavy, and the air, I look at the air, and it almost looks like when you look at the road and there's like those heat waves in the summertime, like those coming off the road, is what I see, except to see that in the air about 4 feet off the ground. And there's this big rectangle. The ground is all, the leaves are all wiped out. It's all clear. All there is dirt, not one leaf in this spot. And there's a bunch of little tree branches, all you can see where they're snapped off and broken off. Looks like little Christmas tree limbs, but there's hundreds of them, and they're all woven together to make this rectangle that's about 11 feet long by about 6 feet wide. And the middle of this thing is completely clear. It's like I don't know, a bed. I don't know what it was, but the wavy lines were in the middle of that thing I could see, and I walked right over to it, and it was like drawing me to it. And my husband's like, what the heck? And we look up, and there's a deer head hanging from one of these trees, just the head of a deer. I looked probably 3 or 4 days old. It didn't look super old, and it didn't look like it just happened. And it's like mounted on a tree branch, 15, 20 feet in the air, maybe 20 feet in the air, almost right above this. And he's like, what the heck? And I'm like, I don't know, but I think we should go, like, right now. I said, do you see these wavy lines to him? And he's like, no, I'm too focused on the square, this rectangle, and this deer head. And I'm like, yeah, let's go. So on the way back, we're still walking out of there, and I look over, and then we see this giant dome. It looks like an igloo. It is about, 10 feet high. Oh, and it's about 12 feet wide, and it is an igloo of sticks, just like a beaver dam, except it's not near the water. It's way off the road. Oh my gosh, it's probably 2 football field lengths away from the water that's up there. And I'm like, what the heck? And he's like, wow, look how it's all woven together. And we're looking at it, and I'm trying to take a picture, and it has a little opening where something big, like that creature I saw, it could have crawled through that opening, but wasn't. It was. So I said, wow, look at it. I'm going to peek in there. And he's like, are you nuts? And I don't know. I just felt like something was drawing me to peek in there. So I got ready to stick my head and my camera inside there. And all of a sudden I heard something move in the back of that igloo, hollowed out igloo. It was all hollowed out. I don't even know how all the sticks were like staying in place, built just like an igloo, like that big without collapsing when it was hollow on the inside. And I got ready to peek in there, and I was trying to take a picture, and I heard something move. I got so scared. I got like half a picture of it, and we got the heck out of there. And we went home. And this was right after we moved in. Like I was saying, we were still moving boxes in. And I heard a whistle coming from one side of the backwoods from our house. Now remember, when you pull up on the side of the house in gravel, and the woods start. When I say woods, it's the foothills of the Smoky Mountains. And it's very thick. In the summer and spring, it looks like the Amazon jungle. You can't even see through there. And it starts out low, and it just gets steeper and steeper as it goes up. And there is a graveyard on top of that hill I found when I hiked up there once, on the tippy top that's super old. I heard a whistle coming from the one side, and I made a joke to my husband because he heard it too. And I said, wow, I didn't know we moved into the Amazon. I thought we moved to Tennessee. And he was like, yeah, That's unusually, it sounded like a bird whistle that you would hear in the Amazon, except it was way too loud and it didn't sound like any bird I've ever heard. Like I said, I grew up playing in the woods. I hunted 20 years, hunt clubs by myself, all over West Virginia, Dismal Swamp, North Carolina, Virginia. Never heard any bird like that, ever. Then on the other side of the woods, there was another whistle. And when it whistled back, it did the exact same thing. So my husband's like, watch this. He did a whistle. When he did the whistle, it imitated exactly what he did. He kept doing it, and over and over and over, they would keep imitating him every time. And it was just so crazy. That same night, I said to him, I cannot believe these things are real. And then he was like, I can't either. This is just nuts. I told you they were real. So the next night, he had to go on a business trip overnight, which was rare, and I did not want to be there by myself. I gave up hunting after living in the Smoky Mountains. I had a whole new appreciation for deer. There were several baby deer that were abandoned by their mom that I bottle fed, raised. I gave them names. There was Laverne and Shirley, Lucy and Ethel. So I had a whole different appreciation for wildlife, so I gave up all my weapons. Well, after I saw this creature, I was terrified. And I said, there's no way I'm staying here by myself without getting a gun. So I got a 50 caliber rifle. I had a scope and laser on it. Well, and I kept it loaded under the bed on my side. And I'm a really good shot, so I didn't have to have any training with it. And he said, I got to go away on a business trip. And I'm like, oh my, I begged him not to go. And he's like, I have to. It's not an option for my job. So he went away that night. And I couldn't sleep. I didn't even want to go to bed because I felt their energy around. Now, when these things come around, you can feel the energy in the air change. My husband said he can't feel it like I can. I've always had special abilities since a kid to be able to sense energies and sometimes know things before they happen. My sister is a well-known psychic in South Carolina. I don't do that because in the Bible that I read, it says you're not supposed to do that. So I don't. But I do have a lot of the same abilities that she does. I can feel energies. I can feel if they're good or bad, and I can feel when they're around. And I also am able to sometimes know things before they happen, usually in dreams, or be drawn to these things. A lot of times when these creatures are around, or they've made a structure, or they put something somewhere, I will be drawn to that area. Like I know exactly where to go. And I don't know how I know, but I do. So that night he went away. It was about 10 o'clock at night. I was getting ready to go to bed. And I heard marching on my front porch. Well, our front deck was about 10 feet by 10 feet. And it reminded me of a little kid doing the high step marching. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, okay, this is your imagination. You're just getting paranoid. You already didn't want to be. I tried to debunk it every way I can. When something happens, I'm always the first person to try to debunk it every way I can. I'm not like, oh my gosh, it's a Bigfoot, or oh my gosh, it's a ghost. That is 100% not me. I do everything I can to debunk it. I mean, I'll even try to make up stuff to debunk it. And then when I can't, I'm just like, well, it is what it is. That's what's happening. So this went on for about 5 minutes. And my dog, I had a collar on him because I didn't want him to charge the front door. So I put a collar on him real quick, and I grabbed him. And I'm like, okay, let's go in the room, buddy. Let's go to bed. Well, he has my service dog, so he's beside me, all the time. And we're going to bed, walking by the front door, and I hear this marching, and it just started getting louder and louder. And I could visually see like a little child Bigfoot, like 5 or 6 years old, doing the high step marching round in circles on my front deck. And I said in my head, okay, calm down, just calm down. And my dog started growling, and he was looking at the door, and he was turning his head from side to side, going, okay, it's not mom. Okay, it's not dad. Okay, it's not this. Okay, it's not that. And then after you can tell he went through the whole scenario of what he knows, of who it was, then he started growling. Well, we just moved there, it hadn't been long. All my kids lived out of state at the time. Nobody knew us. Nobody knew where we lived. And there should have been nobody coming to our house. Nobody. And nobody even knew where we lived. And we didn't know anybody there. So all of a sudden, the doorknob starts turning. And ever since I saw the Bigfoot out back, I had a habit of turning the doorknobs, and they'd make a loud click, click, click. And it was really loud, especially at nighttime. It seemed to echo. Well, when the front door turned, it made that click sound, and then immediately my heart just started just like a million miles an hour, and I started hyperventilating. Like my breathing just took off by itself. Like I'm like, what the heck? I literally thought I was gonna hyperventilate and pass out. So I'm like, okay. I said out loud, not out loud, sorry. I said only. I want to repeat this. I said only in my head. I said this, Carey, calm down, get a grip. Go get your gun. This is really happening. And as soon as I got done saying that, I had an answer in my head that said, and I heard a podcast once that, way out, like a couple months ago, not after this, because I hadn't even listened to any at the time. And people said their voice sounds robotically. And I'm like, no, it doesn't. But then I thought about it, and I could see why they would say that, because this is how they speak. They speak to you in your mind. It said it very methodical and very precise, like it wanted to make sure that I heard exactly what it was saying, and there was no mistake. It said, do not bother. It won't do any good against us. Well, oh my gosh. Well, I still get shaken up thinking about that today. When it said that, my whole body just like went numb. Like I literally just checked out, mentally checked out. I'm like, I couldn't believe that was happening. And what do I do to make the situation worse? I start laughing. I start freaking laughing like a nut. Like I'm thinking, because I'm going through my options. Okay, blow a hole through the front door with the .50 caliber weapon. That's going to be nice to explain when hubby comes home. Or open the front door. Yep, I think not. So that leaves option 3. Option 3. Well, what if they're telling the truth? And I shoot it and I miss. I don't hit the right spot. And it doesn't even kill it. Then what? Then I got a real problem on my hands. I'm dealing with a creature that I don't even know what it is. So I started laughing, and then I'm like, and I'm hearing voices in my head. Who's ever going to believe this? And nobody's around, of course, to witness this. So I did the only thing that I know to do. I grabbed my dog with all my might, which was really a struggle, dragging him to the bedroom, by the bed, and I sit on the bed, and I start saying as loud as I can, in the name of Jesus, I command you to leave. In the name of Jesus, you're to leave this property. In the name of Jesus, you're to get out of here. And as soon as I said the first sentence, it went so quiet. It was deafening quiet, like your ears hurt. It was so quiet. And the rest of the night, nothing. The next day, I told my husband about that, and he was like, "Oh my gosh!" So I said, "You know what? We're going to do a test. If these we're going to just try an experiment." And he's like, "Okay, what are we going to do?" I said, "We're going to put a watermelon out." I heard a podcast where they like watermelon, and we had one. So I said, we're going to cut this watermelon in half. This is like the biggest watermelon we've ever had. This thing took 2 Walmart bags to hold it, and I could barely even carry it. It was so heavy and so full of juice. So we cut it in half, and I said it right. I said, no, I'm going to take it out there. Don't come out there with me. He's like, I don't want you going back there by yourself. I said, I know, but they don't want you back here. He's like, how do you know? I said, I don't know, but I just know they don't want you back here. So I walked to the edge of the woods. He could still see me. He was watching me out the kitchen window. And I set it in a dirt spot right at the line where the trees begin. And I said, and we put it there right at the edge, like 5 minutes before dark. And I said, the second it turns daylight in the morning, we're going to be up before it gets daylight, and we're going to look and go back there and see if a deer eats it, raccoon, possum, anything. And there was going to be a juicy mess on the ground, seeds, rind. There's going to be something. So I go back there. as soon as it gets light, we're both watching at the window in anticipation, waiting. And it's like 5:59. And we're like, come on, 6 o'clock. And then it's like, boom, it's light. So I'm like, okay, I'm going back there. And he's watching me. I'm like, don't leave the window. Just keep watching me. So I walk back there. And I couldn't believe it. It was gone. And I look at the ground, and the ground is as dry as like Arizona dust. You could just pick up that dirt in your hand, and it was so dry. It was a little windy that day. It would just blow away. There was not one seed, not one. There wasn't even a spot where like the juice had dripped on the ground and it had dried up. You would have been able to tell. There was nothing. And it was about a 4-foot diameter area that I set it down in a dry spot. Gone. So I'm like, okay, and I walked. Now, listen to this. I walked the exact same edge, a line. I walked down the line. It was the edge of the line of the woods. And it would be like a field in the back, just of dead, grass or dead grass, depending on what season. And then you draw a line with a pencil. It was a perfect line, and that's where the trees start in the hill, and it just starts gradually going up in the mountains. So I walked the tree line the same way when I put the watermelon down to check it that morning, and it's gone. So I turn around to come back, and I take 2 steps, and I look down, and there's 2 snake skins. Okay, I had just walked out there literally to check this watermelon, and my husband was watching out the window. And they were not there because I was scanning the ground while I was walking out there to find any evidence of this watermelon being pulled away, drug away. So I'm looking like really scanning the ground hard, and I see nothing. And these snake skins were not there. One was about 4 feet long. The other one was about 6 feet long. They were placed, stretched out, parallel, side by side, about 2 feet from each other. I mean, right there. I couldn't have missed it. And I'm like, oh, what the heck? And it was like they set them there as they were giving me a gift back. I just left them. I did not pick them up. But as soon as I saw them, looked down, like my eyes met the snake skins, boom, I felt them looking at me. And I turned around and looked, and I didn't know what to do. So I kind of just put my hand up and waved, and I was like, thank you. Like, okay, thanks guys. And I went in the house. So that was pretty interesting. My next encounter, it was just kept happening over and over and over. And my next big thing that started happening was I started feeling like one of them was watching me. Everything I did, like laser focused on me, watching me. And I started becoming paranoid, like freaked out, scared. Well, I want to start off by saying I do not drink, I do not smoke, I do not take any psychiatric meds. I've never heard voices in my head in my life. And when I heard a voice, it was more like a thought. I can't say it was like a male voice or it was a female voice. It didn't have like a, like an accent to it, like my voice, like a northern kind of voice. It didn't have an accent to it. It was like a thought that was not my own thought that came from the center. Like if you drill down right in the center of my head is where that thought came from, and it was not my own. And I know it wasn't. And when that happened, I don't know, I became paranoid, and I felt like one was watching me, like intently watching me. The front of our windows was in the dining room, and you could see the kitchen. Well, we always kept them open because I liked the sun and the air, and I felt like one was watching me from the wood line in the front of the house where the river was. And I mean, like, and I felt that if I didn't do something was going to happen to me. I just felt it I don't know. I felt it watching me too much, like if you had a stalker watching you, kind of. So I bought some. I know it sounds nuts, but it is what it is. I bought some window tint film off Amazon, like you put on your cars, and I put it on those front windows where sunlight could still get in, and I could see out. But if something or someone else was out there, they couldn't see in. If that worked, I don't know, but it made me feel better, and I felt like that it wasn't there anymore when I did that. Well, that same night, when I went to bed, it was about 3 a.m. The river, like I said, the river was in front and the mountains were in back. We had little pea gravel going down our little walkway. Every single night, I would hear them going down that gravel, and you could hear something bipedally walking, crunch, 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 crunch. And I would go out there, and you could see foot indentions in the gravel, big ones, deep, like way deeper than mine. They'd go back and forth from the river to the woods. And I don't know why, but they did. And one night about 3 a.m, I heard this really loud owl, and it did it so loud, but you could tell it wasn't an owl. It sounded like an owl that put a speaker, like a megaphone, up to its mouth, like those voice changer things you could buy when you were a kid. It just sounded like bionically, like robotic. And it was so loud, and it did it twice. It scared the crap out of me. I jumped up, and I was like, "Did you hear that? Did you hear that?" And he's like, "No." And he was like, "There's so much going on at night." He literally, my husband literally sleeps with 2 pillows over his ears, so he didn't hear it. And the next night, we have 2 fans on our back deck. We did, where we lived in Tennessee, and they look like palm leaves. They would like to spin the fans around and round and round. Well, one day I went out there, and one of the fan blades was snapped off. It was not snapped off where the screws are. It was snapped off in the middle, like just the plastic, complete snap, like something with 2 hands could do it. It wasn't old. They were brand new. They weren't dry rotted. Nobody came to our house. There was no kids around. There was no teenagers around. It was older, like farmer type people, or just older people that wanted to be left alone that lived out there. It wasn't any kind of neighborhood type of place where we lived. So when they broke it off, they left it sitting in the chair. And I saw that, and I was like, "Oh my gosh." So I put it on the deck railing, and I pointed at the woods, and I'm like, "Stop messing with my fans." I was yelling at them, "Stop messing with my fans." So I said, "If you have anything to say, let me know." And I didn't hear anything. So that same night, I went to sleep. And it was about 2:30 in the morning. I heard them crunch, crunch, crunch. Now, the way our bed was, our heads were right up against that wall. Modular home now. The walls were like paper thin. If you're outside and you're snoring, you'll be able to hear the person in the house. It was really thin. Okay, I could hear them walking by, and then all of a sudden I heard something stop right behind my head. The wall, they're outside walking on the pea gravel, the sidewalk, and we're laying in bed. My head's on the other side of the wall, and I hear them stop, and I feel this energy, and this fear comes over me, like I'm so freaking scared. Like this is how it feels. Like, whatever's out there is like 1,000 pounds. And if it wants to, it can just push its hand right through that wall and grab you and just like crush you like a soda can with one hand. That's how it feels. And that is how the fear that I felt. It's not any fear that I've ever, like I said, I got chased by a bear in the mountains of West Virginia. And yes, I was scared to death and dove in between 2 rocks after I got it to back off me, but I didn't feel fear like I did with this thing. I felt like supernatural kind of fear, I don't know. And then all of a sudden I heard it talking, and I heard 2 of them talking. It did not sound I don't know. I've heard the Sierra sounds. I don't know if I could relate it to that or not, but it was the same kind of language. It sounded like 2 little Ewoks kind of talking. And it was like this. So they were like, and it was some kind of language. And then another one answered it right back. And I'm laying there in bed like, holy crap, I can't even believe this is happening right now. Oh my gosh. I'm like laying there like, oh my gosh, oh my God. But I'm still terrified to move. And my husband's dead asleep. I don't want to wake him up because I'm scared if I move or say anything, that they're really going to reach through the wall. I didn't know what was going to happen. But I told them that day, stop breaking my stuff. Stop coming up here. If you got anything to say back, say it. And I guess that's what they were doing. They were saying something back. There was so much activity there. It was beginning to be crazy. We went to town on a Sunday. This experience was really, really bizarre. This is up there with one of the top ones. So we go to town, and it's a Sunday, And I was really tired because every night there was something. They would slap the house. They would tap on let me back up. They would tap on the windows of this modular home, of the front windows. I had 2 indoor cats. My cats would go tearing butt across the house and rip the mini blinds to shreds to get on the other side of the window to see. And then when the cats would peek out, they'd be on the other side of the house, and you'd hear like a finger tap, 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 and then you'd hear the cats tearing butt across the house and ripping the mini blind and bang, 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 and they'd get on the look at the window and they'd be looking out, and then the Bigfoots would go to the other front of the house all night long, back and forth. So between that, them slapping the house, they would throw pebbles at the house. Sometimes I swear it sounded like they were on top of the house a couple times there. I just never got any sleep. So we went to town on Sunday. I was so tired from not getting sleep. So my husband had a lower profile Nissan Altima. I had an SUV. You back in on the side of this house, and it's gravel. The woods are 30 feet away. So he's already parked, and we have our certain spots. Like, he parks all the way to the right, I park on the left. Well, I go to back up, and I take a quick look at the passenger, side mirror. And I was driving, my husband's sitting in the front seat, and I took a quick look out the passenger mirror on the side of the car, and I didn't see his car. Well, when I looked because when I didn't see anything, that's because I was already too close. So I back up, and I hear crunch. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I crashed into the front of his car. I knocked his bumper off, and I dented in my whole back bumper. Well, I have an Acura, so it's a fiberglass bumper. It's not like plasticky where you can push on it or push it in by standing on it. This sucker, it's like fiberglass, like a boat, like it won't move. So I dented it in. I was pretty hard hit. I dented it in about the width of 2 basketballs and the depth of about a whole basketball and then another half a basketball deep. And it was messed up. So I said, you can fix this, right? I've seen people do it with like a blow dryer. You can pop it out with heat, right? He's like, oh no, Carey, this is way too deep. It's going to have to go to the body shop. I'm like, well, how much do you think it'll cost? He's like, oh, probably you're going to need a whole new bumper, maybe $2,500. I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, yeah, we don't have that. That's not happening. And I was so upset. Every day for a week, I have dogs, so I take my dogs out to go to the bathroom. They're inside dogs. I walk by my truck, and that day that it was happening, okay, I was outside, and he went in the house, and he's like, Carey, it's okay. I can get some screws and, fix my bumper. You didn't crack my headlight. It's okay. Accidents happen. Not a big deal. I was so mad because I love this truck. It's such a good vehicle, and I didn't want it messed up, so I was outside going, no, I want to redo. I want this undone. Please, I want this undone. I was just saying it over and over, and all of a sudden, I felt like I was being watched from the woods. So I stopped, and I looked at the woods, and I heard a big stick break, like something stepped on it. I didn't see anything, and every day for a week, I didn't go anywhere, but I walked past my truck, taking my dogs out, and I said the same thing. Oh, I want this undone. Oh, I can't believe this. Please, I want to redo. So for a week, I don't go anywhere. The truck doesn't move. My husband's working. It's a Saturday. He's working. It's a really beautiful fall day. I want to go to the fall festival, get out of the house. So I go to get my truck, and the dent's out. And I'm like, oh my gosh, he must have taken my truck when I wasn't looking and got it fixed. And I'm thinking, but I'm always here. I was looking. So I was like, wow, well, he had to fix it. I mean, how else could it happen? So I forget, I go to the fall festival, I come home, and I forget about it. And the next morning, it was like COVID time, so we were watching church at home, and I'm like, oh, thank you for fixing my truck. And he's like, what are you talking about? I didn't know it was broken. I'm like, yeah, the dent. He's like, Carey, your bumper's still dented. I'm like, no, it's not. You fixed it. He's like, no, I didn't. It's still dented. I'm like, come on, let's show you. We go out there, and he looks, and he starts laughing, and he starts shaking his head. Oh, let me back up. I forgot this part. When I saw the dent out, and I was looking at the dent, it was out, there was a pile of white rocks on that side of the truck on the running board with the little flower on top. It was maybe 10 rocks, and they were built like a little pyramid, and there was a little flower right on top. That was just right on top on that same side. And I was like, I thought he did it. I thought my husband did it because I couldn't, I wouldn't think anything else because it was just too crazy to think anything else. So I said that to him, and I'm like, yeah, and you left the white rocks, and he's like, what white rocks? I'm like, here, they're right here. I brought them in the house. He's like, I didn't do that. He's like, I didn't do any of that. And he looks under there, and you can see a little bit of a palm print under the bumper, just like a human palm print, but it's big. It's way bigger than his hand. And the bumper curves like way up underneath it there. So it's really hard to even see or get up in there. It was so smoothed out. You cannot even tell there was ever any damage done, except there's a straight line down the center, the corner of my bumper where the paint's cracked. But it's completely smoothed out. Not even so much as a little dimple. And he starts laughing. He's like, and he looks at the woods. He's like, thanks, guys. I mean, there's no other explanation how that could have happened. None. But that dent was taken out. At my next experience, the next day, I was going into town. And after the bumper was fixed, I'm still going on about that. And if you leave our road, you drive about a quarter of a mile, and there's a stop sign. Remember, we're out in the country. There's nobody around. There's no traffic. It's very rural. There's no neighborhoods, houses spread out very sparsely, like farmland. And if you make a left, there's a stop sign and giant boulders like the hood of my truck in the river. And on the right, you turn to go into town where there's a huge rock wall, like where the mountain was, just, like a granite wall. It's probably 20 to 30 feet in the air, something like that. And anyway, I hear in my head, my dog starts growling. First, let me back up. He starts growling, and he's looking at out the passenger side, and he's looking on the ground, and then he's looking up at the wood line. He's growling. I'm like, what are you growling at, buddy? So I lean over, I put it in park, I lean over on the passenger side, and I look out the window, and I see 2 deer legs, and they're snapped off at the knees, not at the shoulder, and the skin is twisted round and round and round like you would wring out a towel. And I'm like, okay, it got hit. So I start scanning the road, and I'm like, there's no blood. Okay, it got hit and something drug it off. So I start scanning the road and the big giant rocks, and maybe it went down, they drug it down the rocks towards the river. And I'm scanning and looking, and there's nothing. That road is like, it's cleaner than it's normally clean. And I'm like, okay. And there's not even any birds eating it either. There's no birds around, buzzards or anything. And I could tell they were snapped off at the knees because you could see the knees, and the bones are serrated, and one bone is like 2 inches higher than the other bone. And that's the same on both legs. And I'm like, that is so weird. So I'm getting ready. And if you've ever been a hunter, nobody that I know ever snaps, and you can't snap bone. It's not easy to snap bone. And when I say snap, because you can see they're serrated edges. It's not like a clear cut, or even like it tried to be a clear cut. So I get ready to get out of the car, and I see a little blood drip come out, and I'm like, oh crap, that just happened. There's not a lot of blood in deer legs. It's mostly just bone and tissue and tendon. And I'm like, oh crap, that just happened. I'm like, I'm not getting out. I took a million pictures. And then I got the heck out of there. And first thing I did was lock my door, which I don't know why. That's not going to do any good. Took a bunch of pictures, and I take off, and I hear in my head, after I drive about 30 seconds, and the only thing that's there is on my left is the railroad tracks, a little bit of woods, and the big Nolichucky and French Broad River on the left. And the right side is this giant granite rock wall, 20, 30 feet in the air. And I hear in my head, look up. So I look up immediately, and I was going very slow, like 2 miles an hour, scanning the road to see if I see any evidence of that deer being hit or the rest of its body or anything. And it's 8 o'clock in the morning. There's no traffic. I could have stopped in the middle of the road. There's nobody. And I look up, and I see a Bigfoot standing on the top of the ridge. Well, the sun is at its back. It's coming through its back. So it has its arms out to the side, and it's standing just like a soldier would stand, straight up at attention. Its arms bowed out to the side, its elbows bent a little bit, and it looks like the same color. It does not look like the same one, but it looks like the same color as the other one. Both of them did not have conical. They did not have pointy heads. They had round heads like a giant fat bowling ball with like no neck. Like their head just started and then shoulders, wide shoulders. I would say 4 feet wide, 4.5 feet wide from the shoulders and then going down, a little bit of a tapered waist, muscular legs. They both looked like that. I could not make out any facial features because the sun was at its back, but I could see the hair when it had its arms bowed out and the sunlight was coming in between its arms. I could see the hair hanging off and it was glistening. Really, like they were very groomed, like they had better hair products than I've got. I don't know where they get the hair products, but I need some of those. And it was just crazy. And then I said in my head to this creature, it's because I knew that they talked to me in my head before. So I'm like, what the heck? I give it a shot, right? What's worse is going to happen? I mean, I'm already nuts because I'm seeing these things, so just go for it. So I say in my head, and my dog's still growling, by the way. He's not happy. And I'm like, dude, just be quiet. I'm trying to talk this thing in my head. Like I'm having a conversation with my dog and me and this creature. I say, what are you? Are you a Nephilim? Because after I saw this creature, I reread my Bible like another 5 times, and it's the only thing that I could come up with, because I have to have a place to put this creature in my head so I cannot feel so nuts. And I said, are you a Nephilim? Are you a Nephilim? And this is what he said to me, very slowly, exactly like you said before. There are some, he said, we are just like people. Some good, some bad. And I'm like, holy crap. Oh my gosh, you just answered me. Holy crap. So I'm like, gotta get my phone. I got my phone in my waistband because I didn't even put it in my pocket or lay it on the seat. I just shoved it in the front of my pants waistband so I could have it. And I looked down for like, oh my gosh, not even a fraction of a second to grab that phone. And I looked back up to take a picture with my phone. It was gone. It was gone so quick. And I told my husband, all about this that night. We're eating dinner. I'm telling him all about this. We're sitting with 2 TV trays watching TV. And we had 2 extra bedrooms. Well, one room, we called it the cat room. That was where their toys were in their litter boxes. And if you're standing at that window, by the way, that window is the bottom of that window is 4.5 to 5 feet off the ground. I would say probably 5 feet off the ground. I'm 5'6", and if I stood outside that window, the bottom of that window would come up to my collarbone. So 4.5 feet tall, the bottom of that window. And if the mini blind's open, you'll be able to see where we're sitting. So it was dark, and I said to him, as I'm telling him the story, did you shut the cat room curtain tonight? Because I was really always like, shut the curtain. I mean, like, I started shutting those curtains before it got dark, because I knew they were, as soon as it gets dark, the energy changes and it's like, it's on, they're out. And I said, did you shut that curtain? And he's like, I don't know why. He's like, oh, crap. I'm like, what? He's like, I feel it too. I said, you do? He's like, yep. I said, I know. We're being looked at. I feel it too. We both do. So we both turned our heads at the exact same time and looked. And I saw this creature remember how high this is off the ground. The bottom of the window is 4.5 feet off the ground. I see this creature standing at the window, and I see it from just a tiny bit above its waist up. So, I mean, what is it, 9 feet freaking tall? And I see it standing at the window looking at us. It's all black. It's turned. Okay. If you stand up straight and you pivot just the top half of your body to turn and say, look at something, but you keep your legs straight. That's how it kind of was standing. It was kind of standing in a side angle like that. So if it had been standing full on straight, it would have blocked out the whole window. Now, this is a normal, average size, regular window, not tiny, it's normal. It would have blocked out the whole window. And when we both looked, that thing moved so quick. I call it the blink of an eye. Like if you blinked your eye, it's gone. It moved. They move that quick. From what I've learned, they can move in the blink of an eye. They could clear like a whole field gone. They have supernatural strength, speed. They can talk to you in your head. They got all these abilities that we don't have. The next day I set out a bunch of food in the wood line for the deer carrots and stuff like that was old. We didn't want. And I'm doing dishes. I set it out in the morning. It's like noon. I'm doing dishes at the kitchen sink, and that window faces that back wood line, mountain line, where all the action's been happening. Now, there's a little split in between these two mountains that used to be an old logging road like 100 years ago, and I call it the gauntlet because that's where everything passes back and forth. It's just a flat spot right in between two mountain ranges, and it's probably 100 feet wide, and the creek does run through there, and it's a beautiful clover and stuff like that. It's just a really peaceful just a little tiny area. It's not big, maybe the length of a quarter or half of a football field. And I'm looking, it's sunlight, noon, and I think I see movement. And all of a sudden, I see this creature. It looks exactly like a Bigfoot cutout, the way it's walking, arms, and I see it. Okay, the sunlight, the way it's hitting the woods, part of the tree line, it's dark because of the way the sun and the trees are. And then where the gauntlet, the crossovers part is back in the back field, like two mountain ranges, you got the back field, then that little space where it crosses over in the back is lit up with the sun. Well, I see this Bigfoot walking along the edge of the wood line where I just put this food out, and it's walking past that, and it steps out into the sunny spot. And the way it looks like if you took a razor blade and shaved off a piece of glass and stuck it and and turned it into paper and stuck it all over your body. That's the way it looked. It was reflecting all kinds of lights off of it, like the rainbow color, like a little prism or crystal you'd hang from your rear view mirror kind of thing. And I couldn't believe in it, but I could see it because it had stepped out into full sun, and that's what it looked like. And I'm like blinking my eyes going, what the heck? And then it stepped over across into the dark, the area that wasn't lit up by the sun. And as soon as it stepped over in there, it was just gone. It was invisible, completely invisible. I just couldn't believe it. There was so much activity going on at that house that I just told my husband, I said, I can't take it anymore. I can't sleep. I'm just scared. Every time I would set my dogs out on the back deck, the creatures would growl. I mean, the dogs would growl and the creatures would throw pebbles at the back deck. I would hear a little ding, 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 ding. And I was like, what the heck is that? So I'd go and look, and there'd be little pebbles from the creek. And this is the crazy part, which was 90 feet away. So they're being able to whiz little pebbles, a little pebble 90 feet away, and hit the back of our house, trying to hit the dogs. That house had so many holes in it, all the way around. On the siding was holes. Those pebbles would go right to the siding. That's how hard they throw them. Every spot of the house had holes in it from them throwing rocks. And they did not like the dogs out there. The dogs could see them, and it would be fine for 5 minutes, and they'd start growling. That was the whole reason we had the deck built, for the dogs to be able to lay out and get sun and just enjoy the outside, or me too. And every time I would put them out there and I would get ready to come out, they would start doing that to the dogs. So I'd have to bring the dogs in, and I wouldn't feel comfortable going out there. And I just said, I can't. We're going to have to move because I can't take this anymore. I think the straw that broke the camel's back, where we had to move, was we saw some greasy, oily handprints up on the side of our house, probably 10 feet high, right after he power washed the house, and they were way bigger than his hand. And that same day, after he power washed the house, we went for a walk with the dogs about a mile down the road, and as we were coming back home, we hear this loud noise coming, and it sounds like, I don't know, like tractors, like loud souped up monster trucks, and we could hear it for a long ways coming, and we're like, what the heck, and we had both dogs, and it's right at the edge of dark, about 7 o'clock at night in the summer, and it just seemed like they were coming forever, but we couldn't see them. And then all of a sudden, all of a sudden he's like, Carey, look out. And my husband shoved me really hard into the bushes and pushed me down. I'm sure it pushed me down. It sounds awful, but he had to. If he didn't, they would have run me right over. I still am holding the leash wrapped around my hand, so it jerked the dog with me. And there was, I forget how many there was. I want to say 6 or 7 of them. I don't remember offhand. Something like 4 to 7. I don't remember the number now. It's been so many years back, but there were these blacked out Jeeps. They were military Jeeps, and they were all driving. They were almost touching bumper to bumper, like literally. I don't even know how you have to be trained to drive like that. And they were getting it. They must have been doing 50 miles an hour. First of all, we don't even know how they got in that road, because there's only one way in and one way out. And as loud as they were, we would have seen or heard them coming in, because we were home all day, and we never did. And they did not care that I was right there with the dog. They would have run us right over and kept on going. And the windows were all tinted out. They were solid black. It was like an off-road type vehicle, like an ATV / Jeep, like a real full-size Jeep, and they had hard top covers. And there was one tiny little tag on only one of them, the front, that said GOVT, and that was it. But the way they were driving, I laying on the ground looking, they were almost, you might as well say, you could slide a piece of notebook paper in between each vehicle, and they were driving like that, and they were just, they booked it out of our road, and they were just gone. And that was like the last thing. I'm like, I just can't take it anymore. Like, this is really starting to destroy, my mental health. Every day something is happening. Like, I want to move. I just want to move. I want to move. And we did, and it didn't stop. It didn't stop. I learned they're going to go wherever they want to go. You can't move from them, and you can't run from them. They're going to do what they want to do, and you're just wasting your money thinking you can. We moved out of state, and it didn't stop.
Well, that's it for tonight's show. If you've had a Bigfoot sighting and would like to be a guest, please go to mybigfootsighting.com and let us know. Thanks for listening. Have a great night.
Seen a bunch of rundown no-horse towns where the church is the backbone, loves in the plow, and the 5-string melodies grooving, with the farmland rows where the roots run deep, beyond the noise of the busy streets, where the songs of the South are soothing. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah, the sound of a memory brings me back to the bluegrass playing on my dad's 8-track. His pickup man had been through it, getting through the day on Scruggs and Skags, booking hay bales to those Tennessee jams. There's no other way that I'd do it. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah. Something coming backwards in double time, getting in the soul and the tremolo Kentucky style. Those are the anthems strumming out, country boy living. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Pace of the city life drives me wild. The only tune is the cars rushing by, with the bass on the stereos booming. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah. Something going backwards in double time, getting in the soul and the tremolo Kentucky style. Those are the anthems strumming out, country boy living. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, mama's best sweet tea. Come a